This year, we might be heading into the most unique election in our history. Not only are the candidates unique, but the electorate demographics might have evolved by the biggest leap yet in the Fourth Republic. Now, as we prepare to compile a new voters register, we ask, what will the electorate look like? What will they want? What are the factors that will have the biggest impact on their vote in the coming elections? What will swing the voter in 2020? My guest tonight has some fascinating insights on the subject. He will share them with us tonight, only on Upfront. Stay with us. Celebrating 25 years of fearless journalism, my name is Kojo Yankson. Thank you for joining us. Now, there's something different about these imminent 2020 elections. For starters, voters for the first time are faced with a choice between two known quantities in the front runners. I mean, neither of them has the advantage of selling an untested promise. The soon-to-be compiled voters register is expected to represent the largest ever electorate in our history. But will they come out to vote in December? If social media is to be believed, then we might be in for the lowest voter turnout in the Fourth Republic. What would that mean? And what exactly will this new electorate be concerned with? With a redrawn map, will we see redrawn wish lists? Will the Ghanaian voter be swayed by new priorities? Should parties continue to court the rural voter? Or does a new group wield the power of life and death over our candidates? Let's analyze what will swing the voter in 2020 with our guest, Vice President of Imani Africa and private legal practitioner Kofi Bentil. Good evening. How nice to see you.
Good evening.
I'm still quite amazed that we managed to get you. You are very busy.
Well, yeah, I had to take some time off and come over. So we can have this chat. It's intriguing. When we started the discussion, I thought, well, let's see how it goes. So we just share a few ideas, but we have to say they are mine. They are not researched Imani ideas being put out authoritatively per se. But in the line of things we do, we get a few interesting insights, and I just want to see how that plays out here.
Excellent. Well, let's get started. And of course, 2020 comes with its own unique characteristics. We've already talked about some of them. But how will the electorate be different this year?
Okay, so there was something about 2016, the last election. There was, for me, this is how I put it, that was the last time people really believed that a different political party could deliver a set of different things. I'm trying to find the words, but let me explain what I mean. Now people tend to say they are the same. I believe you've heard it. And you know, there was a time when ideology mattered. Whether you were socialist leaning, whether you were, capitalist leaning, whether you were statist, you wanted more of the role of the state, you wanted incrementalism, the state should do everything, and then somebody would say, oh, free enterprise and all those things. In my mind, in my mind, 2016 was the last time that mattered. Because you had this arrangement where people thought, okay, this group of people are going to come in and this is what they will drive. The private sector, this and this, and people are realizing there's really not much difference. So that's very interesting. What it means going forward is that you can't really come and say, we believe in the Ghanaian and the Ghanaian's ability to make a change, and this, you can't sell that anymore. All right? That thing about, oh, they are all the same is extremely serious, and that will make a difference in this election and maybe going forward. Look, it's possible for somebody to restore the belief that people have a certain ideological drive. It can be restored later. But for 2020, ideology won't matter. What it means, therefore, is that you're going to say, look, stop all that talk. Show me the goods. Okay, and the question is, what are those goods that people are going to be looking for? You know, so that's interesting. The general mistrust, therefore, of the political class, okay, is something we should all worry about. Honestly, we should worry about. It's a general thing. It's a reason across the world. In our part of the world, it's also showing we should worry about it because it is important that people have a certain amount of faith, a certain amount of faith in leadership, because that is the glue that holds society together. If you don't have faith that, for instance, the police will protect you, that a teacher will teach well, that a doctor is a good doctor, or at least is, bound by some regulation and will do things according to a certain minimum standard, and if it doesn't, something will happen. The state brings something to bear which keeps us all running. The driver coming is going to drive on the right lane, those things. And when you push it into the political area, there must be a certain minimum faith in leaders. Otherwise, the society will suffer. And that faith comes from delivering goods. We do believe that, and when I say we, now I'm talking money, but again, personally, that the set of things people require of our political leaders is not so much rooted in this faith, which we hope they will retain, which has eroded, but it's rooted in some very practical things. So people will be like, if you give me money, I'll collect it, but it won't change the way I vote. People will be like, okay, every 4 years you come around here, so when they give you the money, collect it, and those things. We think it matters to people that they have water. But you know the interesting thing? I don't think too many people now expect that it is the sole responsibility of government to bring them water. No. Okay. For me, it's a double-edged sword. I think we must expect that it's the government that has to bring us water. But today, people are not that disappointed about Ghana water. I had a recent fight with them. And, well, they contacted me, so I hope it will be resolved. But I'm not their customer. All right? And I'm not alone. There are so many people, if Ghana water is not working, find another way. Same for electricity and those things. But it matters to them now. For those who don't have it, that's one thing. For those who have it, the price of water is somewhere okay. People don't complain too much about the quality because of sachet water and those things. So water is important, but won't be that important as it was maybe in a time when we were thinking about water privatization. And people felt like who you voted for would determine those things. Today, it's gone. Health is very important. Okay? What's happening to the National Health Insurance Scheme? It will come up. It will come up because that hits people. Okay? People hope that the NHIS will work for them. That hope is not all total. So if it doesn't really work, the disappointment is not too much. But once in a while when it hits you, okay, you feel it. Now, I think that depending on how things go, there will be a coalescing of views. Okay, people are going to start trading stories. Around the third quarter of this year market, you will hear stories coming from groups of people who basically are articulating their experiences around health. And you will see the opposition parties make capital out of that.
It's fascinating. You point out this reducing dependence on the political class for the basic things that the populace needs. Will this lead to apathy, or will it simply shape their choice? As in, do people still think it's important to vote? Or will this start to make them feel...
Very good question. No. Because it has already. I talk to a lot of people trying to get a sense of balance, a sense of what's going on. It is extremely serious, the levels of apathy. So when you ask, will it lead to apathy? I said that 2016 was the last time people expected a government to change their life. And that has led to apathy already. Then you had this thing about 2016 where the existing ruling government now won by 1 million votes. I don't think they'll win by 1 million votes if they win. And the question is, will those people come back and vote? And for what? I was telling, I've told people, so not just one group, but a number of people, and one or two groups, that many people sometimes, and I see that very much nowadays, don't necessarily go and vote because they like candidate A. Many people vote because they don't like candidate B. So it's not like I like this guy. There are people who love this guy and want him to work. And indeed, the ruling government, MPP, people voted for Danado because they wanted to see Danado win. This year, I don't think too many people are going to vote necessarily because they love the candidate. They will look at the two and say, no, I don't like this guy. Because of that, I'm going to vote for this guy. Now, but that also relates to the apathy. Somebody I spoke to said, I traveled 5 hours to go and vote. And I said, one vote? Says, yes, it was that important to me. And without me asking, they just added, I'm not going to do that again. So immediately, analysts are always analyzing. I'm like, look at the emotion with which they voted last time. And look at the quick, reaction to, I'm not going to do that again. And I see that a lot. So the apathy is real. What is causing it? This thing that they are all the same. And then this view that it is not the government that is going to change my life. Okay, so what am I going to benefit? And the cynicism that brings is why people are going to ask to be paid. So apathy is a real problem.
Now, another thing that's going to happen this year is that we're expecting to have a new voters register. That's what the Electoral Commission insists that they're going to do. There's been objection from your group and many others, but they seem hell-bent on going ahead with this. What will this new register look like? I mean, by your analysis, what will the demographics change significantly? Are we going to see, first of all, are we going to see a bigger voters register than the 15.8 million or so, 15.7 million that we had in 2016?
The 15.7 million was a mistake. We don't have that many voters. The statistics don't support that. And if you see the number of people who actually voted, you'll see that that was a problem.
So then that means the register is bloated?
Yes, you can say so. But you see, that's the thing about biometrics. The thing about biometrics, people don't realize it, is that it's timeless. And it has a self-cleansing mechanism. So if it is bloated, but you don't have my fingerprint, you can't go and vote in my name. And my fingerprint will be the same 20 years from now. So it's timeless. And it's self-cleansing. So even if the dead people's names are there, you can't go and use them. Except somebody creates some wild fraudulent arrangement, which is easy to catch and not easy to do. So I don't think we'll have 15 million, but if we do, I'll be quite sure that that means about 50% of us are eligible to vote. We know Ghana's demographics say that about half of us are youth. Okay, so it just doesn't make sense. If we do a good job, we won't get 15 million. That said, you know our position about this register and whatever is being said about it. You say the EC is hell-bent on going ahead and doing it. We'll have a press conference in a week or so, and we'll speak maybe one more time. I don't know if it's the last time about that. There is a certain probability that they will not go ahead. I think they are determined to do it. But look, the time left, the logistics, the procurement issues, the mobilization, sign a contract, check this and check that, have the manufacturing done, have it delivered, have it tested. I worry a bit about whether we can cram all that in, have a new registration, system that will be ready. And we've already made the point that in many cases, and the examples are there, you don't have to listen to Imani, where you use a new system, you have massive problems. So we worry a bit, and we think that, well, we've said our piece, let them make the decision. I don't think it will change much in reality, except somebody is determined to play games with the register.
Is that possible?
It is possible. But under the circumstance, I think it will be foolhardy. Because, and I take this from way back when it was MPP now arguing about a voters register, and I said, no, you shouldn't have that. We ended up going to court doing a few things, and the register yielded this precedent. Is that possible? It is possible. But the structure we have now, where we've come from the past to where we are now, just a little diligence and vigilance can stop 90% of whatever anybody wants to do. Okay, so whoever wants to use this, I said, is foolhardy. I don't think you'll succeed, because the opposition parties, or even just the NDC now in opposition, with very easy mobilization can be vigilant enough to stop all of that. And then when you come to the voting itself also, I'm hacking the machines, then maybe you have to disrupt the whole thing. So for me, electoral fraud under this structure, this system, is not impossible, but it's foolhardy because it's risky. You're not likely to get too much out of it, and you're likely to risk a lot. Okay, and none of us, even I can say assuredly that if MPP tries to rig the election, MPP people will be upset if they find out. If NDC tries to rig the election, NDC people will be upset if they find out. Ghanaians have gotten to the point where we are, going above a few things. So, as for whether they will have the register or not, it's up to them. I think it's going to be very difficult. I think they are taking on a bit too much. They should have, done this earlier. The register itself, if they do a good job, I think we'll come up with an okay register. It won't be much different from what we have now. Okay. And those who are thinking maybe gives some sort of advantage to one party or the other, I think a little vigilance from any opposing party will clean out or prevent any kind of funny business with the register.
So let's assume that our register will not vary in content so much from what we have at the moment. How about this, the balance of power? For so many decades, we've believed that we have a majority rural electorate and that a political party should focus on wooing the rural voter. That's where the numbers are. Those of us having these conversations in Accra, we are in the minority. Those of us talking on social media, we're in the minority. Are these still realities going into 2020?
No. And there's a huge change afoot. I like to believe that our political parties do research. I like to believe that they do their own polling and those things. It's not as effective here as it will be elsewhere. But one very important thing, behind what you're saying is that people don't realize that today, Ghana is 60% urban. 60% urbanized. From 2009, our population became more urban than rural. Over 50% of Ghanaians were living in urban areas. So 49% were in rural areas. That's one. From 2009, it's gone over 50. As at about 2018, it was around 56% urbanized. So if it's 2018, 2020, I think we're about 60% urban. That's extremely important. It's important because of a few other things that connect to that thing. An urban population is reached by radio. There was a time when you had English radio, almost exclusively. For some time now, we have P radio, or local language radio, which has taken over, in terms of numbers, the English radio. So you have 60% of the people in the urban areas, which means you can't do the rural propagandizing, which used to be the staple. Look, there was a time, I remember, because at Imani it affected us. When we put out our reports, when we do our radio and TV and whatever it is, it hits the urban population. And the politicians will tell you that you finish your talking. When you finish, we'll go and do the rural thing. They'll take one or two things, they get to the rural areas, and they get numbers. And they turn things. Not anymore. And when we say things, the local language stations will take them and interpret them and spice them. So, first, you don't have the numbers in the rural areas as you used to. On the other hand, the numbers are in the urban areas. Secondly, it is not that easy to propagandize or to spread propaganda or make propaganda effective because there's a lot of interconnection and communication in urban areas. All right? They need to address themselves to that. And the fact that people in urban areas, things get more acute. People believe that when you're in an urban area, life is harder. Maybe because you don't have the family connections, you can't fall on somebody. When you're hungry, you can't go to a farm and dig up some cassava and come and eat. In an urban area, life is hard. They say Accra live by plant, all those other things. So people become acutely aware of things and they react more sharply. That fact should not be lost on our politicians. And I think that they need to address that because it will have an effect on the elections. And that has really changed the nature of how campaigning has to happen, Somebody may not have worried much about water in their village, but they worry about water if they live in a shaman. You know, those things. So that fact that 60% of Ghanaians now are in urban areas and they can be reached by other people who are saying things to them and giving them ideas about what is going on is extremely important.
Right. Well, we're talking with Kofi Bentil, and it's becoming clear that it's not going to be business as usual in 2020. Some fundamental things are changing. When we come back, we'll analyze what the political parties ought to do in face of these changes. What should they be doing to garner the biggest numbers? How should they be altering their strategy? And should you, the voter, be at the forefront of their minds? When we come back, that and more. Stay with us. In the run-up to the 2020 elections. So what's going to be different? And how are political parties expected to respond to some of these changes? Let's explore that now. Kofi, we've already highlighted some of the big changes, particularly in terms of the rural-urban split, and also how opinions are going to be formed and shaped. But as we go into this election, a number of other things are new. I wonder whether they will have an impact. For example, the right to information law, which is supposed to be
enforced.
Yes, enforced as we speak. How will that affect people's formation of opinions and ultimately their vote?
So, right to information, for those of us who have fought for it all these years, it's supposed to be enforced, but really it has not been properly set up. So let me put it this way. The right to information law remains a potent threat to the political class. Why I say so is that if people are sufficiently incensed, they can use it. When I and my team went to court, we didn't have the law. We went on the strength of the constitutional provision and we won. Now we have a law. So it remains a potent threat to the political class because today, look, we just learned that the government spent over $200 million hiring consultants in the past 3 years. I'm a consultant in this country. I didn't see any of that money, not a penny of it. So the first question that comes to my mind is, who were those consultants? What did they do and what did we get out of it? Tomorrow, if I wake up and I feel sufficiently incensed, I can file a right to information action and ask for the whole list of consultants, what they did, how much they were paid, and what has come out of it. That is what I mean by a potent threat. Will I do it? Will I not do it? Depends on how I feel. And it's a good thing. Okay, but to the extent that it remains a threat, I don't think in this election year in particular, it will be as used. So it's a threat. And maybe we should use it, but I'm not sure we'll use it. I'm not sure it's going to play too much here, except there's some really serious scandal. Look, we've had, even with the EC thing, we are thinking around and toying with legal action. But I personally am a bit reticent because I don't want to cripple the EC. Okay, if they want to do what they want to do and they want to do it well, I'm happy for them to do it well. My job is to sound warnings. So when I sound the warning and they can fix the problem and get it well done, I'll be fine. So people think a lot before they do some of these things. So things like RTI will not be an issue, but you don't need RTI to query this government, for instance. They are the victims of the high expectations they set themselves. And I think that is what is going to be an issue. Okay, I was just listening to arguments about one district, 1 billion, is one constituency, $1 million. I don't think they spend that money. We've done 3 years, or almost 3 years. 3 years. So it means they should have spent $1 million in every constituency in each of these 3 years. Okay, they would have to come and account to us. You know why? Because they will be demanded. You know, it will be demanded of them. And those will be the things really which, if they don't answer well, could become a problem more than right to information. It's a form of, information, but this one, the NDC, for this matter, the opposition party, will just take a list of those things and demand that you tell us what you did. After 110 ministers and after everything said and done, so there will be things that will force information out. And it will be an issue. It will be an issue because this election, a lot, like I said in the beginning, there's a general mistrust of the political class, both sides. So people are going to go into their tribal camps. There will be a lot of floating voters, okay, people who will be listening not to the political parties. Let me say this. Every propaganda, everything put out by a political party is discounted by 60% already. You check some of those things. When NDC comes out and says something, when MPP comes out and says something, whoever is listening, who is talking? Okay, it's MPP. 60% discount. You know, and on both sides. So now, people listen to mid voices, middle voices, independent voices, third parties, disinterested parties, and yes, people like us, Imani, radio, you know, commentators. All of us have assumed a higher level of responsibility. Okay, now, when all these things come together and then the accounting starts, when they tell you, Kojo Yankson, we've done this and that and that and that and that, if the NDC person says it, the listener will discount it by 60%. If the MPP person says it, discounted by 60%, then they'll listen to what you are saying. And they'll listen to what an independent analyst is saying. And again, the rural-urban thing comes inside. The 60% urban people, if the guy was maybe in his village, he will not be as influenced by a radio pundit. But if he's sitting somewhere, there will be a radio pundit that comes to explain what that means to them. Okay, so right information, yes, is a threat, but there will be a lot of accounting. And that accounting, so far, not so good.
Well, let's look at how parties should be responding. And we have this unique situation. I was talking about how, well, we have two known quantities. One presidential candidate who was rejected in the last election, and another presidential candidate who some of those who voted for him think he hasn't given them what he promised. So going into this election, the track records are known. Nobody can come along and give you a lofty dream, and then just on the off chance he may be right, you vote for them. Now you know what you're dealing with. How should these two parties respond to the fact that the electorate is more sophisticated, more evolved, and certainly less trusting?
So these are my views. I hope they are doing their homework on that, but they should respond. When it's communication. In communication, you say or you communicate in a way that your audience appreciates. Don't talk to yourself. So the first thing is they must respect the principles. Don't just go out, for instance, if you are in the ruling party and parlay a number of economic figures. You should communicate in a way that makes sense and is convincing to your audience. To that extent, therefore, they should account for their stewardship. And you said, President Mahama, President Akufo-Addo, there are things we can weigh them with. So they should each account for their stewardship, but account in a way that is persuasive to their audience. So for instance, I can say that the first quarter of this year, we are just in March, has been very good in terms of macroeconomic stability. The city has done very well. And it didn't just happen. I think the finance minister deserves a lot of commendation for the management. Yes, a few other things, including coronavirus, even have helped. But clearly, this was as a result of some really good management. When you go to speak about that, it's accounting. But don't do it in a way that makes you happy. Find a way to use that to communicate something to that audience. Okay. Now, so accounting is important. We talk about all the promises that were made. Free SHS. We've all been here, we've experienced it. We've seen the good, bad, the ugly, the double track and all those things. Of course, the MPP will be remiss if they don't make huge capital of it. All right? But they will not be let alone to just go to town and talk about it. So they should devise communication strategies that are compelling. So what should the political parties do? Communicate in compelling ways. Account. And you should expect blowback. Okay? So when you speak about the ambulances that you brought out, expect that the MDC is going to come out and punch holes in what you've said. Okay? So we have ambulances, yes. Somebody will call the number and wait for 30 minutes and see will that ambulance arrive. Because they can tell you that we bought ambulances, but we don't have a good enough ambulance system. Why didn't you do the system? So what they have to do is to make sure you are connecting to people and showing them this is what I've done for you, and this is what I'm potentially going to do if you give me another chance. Same for President Mahama. He had his 4 years. What did you do? And he was accused of all kinds of things. Okay, he will be forced to compare himself to the present government. He has to communicate in compelling ways. Okay, I don't think the present government will make $1 million margin if they win, but I do think of the two, and I won't say who, one of them has an upper hand. Maybe closer to the tide, if it remains so.
All right. Well, that's one thing to look forward to from Kofi Bento. And of course, we're talking with him about election 2020 and what will swing the voter in the upcoming election. I think that is the question we will wrap up with when we come back from these messages. Are you a swing voter? Does Kofi Bento think your vote still matters as much as it used to? More when we return. Election 2020. We're trying to understand what will swing the voter in the upcoming election. Now, Kofi, before the break, we established one of the points that you made, that today's voter kind of thinks that the two parties are the same. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of equalization that goes on between the two political parties anyway. Mm-hmm. So, going into this election, are we going to see an even more crucial swing voter? Or are they losing their importance because there are so many other things that can affect the numbers for either party? For example, apathy.
Mm-hmm. Right. Very good question. So it is true that there is some captive, phenomenon. The parties each have their captive audiences, at least 30%. But something happened. With the huge margin the last time, I could sense that the NDC in that case had been pummeled with corruption and this and that. Incompetence, all the things that were thrown at them. Their followers toned down. I know NDC people who changed their, their ferocity changed. They just relaxed, and when they lost, it wasn't too bad for them. Okay, it was because of the way they were attacked. The same people I'm talking about have regained their confidence. And when you talk to them, I have friends in NDC, they say, hey, if you say corruption, these people too are corrupt. All right? If you say we didn't do anything, we built infrastructure, what infrastructure have they built? So somehow over the past 3 years, the confidence that the NDC faithful lost in 2016 has been regained to a certain extent. On the other hand, the passion with which the MPP faithful drove their campaign is not the same. I still think, therefore, that the captive, voters for each of the party will cancel out. Then there is the 1 million who were mostly the swing voters, mostly urbanized, and mostly people who were not committed to any party in particular. Now, those people, the problem with them is that they don't have any passion for any of the parties per se. To that extent, therefore, it is what you tell them, what they believe in, and all those other things that move them. And the question is, who will move them? I sense something based on all the people I've talked to, that there is a certain sense that they don't want a return to NDC. But there is also this thing about, why should I be the one to go and vote for this other person? So the job for the ruling party will be to get these people interested enough to retain them, because the captive voters may cancel out, and they are important. Again, the 60% urbanization comes in. People who would have sat in their villages and slept or gone to the farm or whatever it is will be listening to some radio pundit who will fire them up and tell them, go this way or go that way. So again, the middle voter, the untied voter, the I don't want to call them independents, but yes, those who are not attached to any particular voter will determine this election. And honestly, I cannot tell at all how they will go. I just can sense that there's a little bit of residue from the last election, which tells me that they may not want a certain return. But there are some too who are like, okay, we didn't get what we were looking for. All right. So it is an open field. Look, like I said, I think one of them has an upper hand. I can't say it now. Getting to the end, we'll all say who we think will win. But they all have to work hard because it will be important who gets that independent swing voter. Very important.
This is how I'd like us to wrap up. It's a curious question, but I wonder what you think of it. So these two parties are forever the two biggest parties, and every election will really be down to the two of them, if we're being fair. But with 8 months or so to the election, is it still possible for some charismatic Lone Ranger to come from nowhere, suddenly start saying exactly what Ghanaians want to hear, perhaps some sort of drain the swamp message, and then suddenly gather enough momentum to threaten these two parties and even possibly upset them in December?
So for an analyst, impossible is not a word we use. So there's always a statistical possibility. In this context, however, it is more than just a fleeting notion. Again, because there is a certain erosion of trust in the existing political class. However, there is this other thing. People don't believe a third force can win. I can tell you this for a fact. When we started Occupy Ghana, there were a few people who approached us and said, we should convert this into a third force. And it had enough energy. Now, I, for one, a few of the people who spoke to me, I told them, that is not what I'm here for. So even if it was clear you could do that, that's not what I'm interested in. I can tell you for a fact that some people interested in this thing, once in a while approach those of us they believe are independent and they want us to help them do this or help them do that. So what I'm saying is that there are ideas afoot. But in the general Ghanaian electorate, there is this unbelief that a third party can make a difference. So that works against them. However, like you're saying, if they start saying the same things and whatever it is, and I've told you something already, that those CSOs and co have become more or less the trusted voices. If that person can convince a number of them and a number of independent people, to be seen and show their faces with them, they could make some sort of a dent. But the truth is, I don't think it's possible. I don't think they can rally enough people to upset these guys. What can potentially happen could be a second round, but honestly, look, remember what happened to Indu? Yep. And at this point in time, if you ask me, I'll say, look,
not likely.
It's going to be one of the two.
Wow. Kofi, this has been fascinating. I'm so glad you could make it. This, of course, has been UPfront. Kofi Bentil is the Vice President of Imani Africa, and he has been staring into the crystal ball with us into the upcoming election to see what it could potentially look like. This is clearly the first of many such conversations. Stay with your station, the Joy News channel, for all of them. My name is Kojo Yankson. It's been a pleasure. Coming up next, Joy News Prime.